The world is louder and more chaotic than ever. That's why clarity and truth have never been more important. Welcome to the Trust Factor Podcast. Okay, my friends, we're going to wrap up the last few days where we've been talking about these people in positions of power. And then we're going to move on to the ultimate consequence that can come from people in positions of power in a negative way and how to deal with it. What am I talking about? First of all, let's put a pin in everything that we've talked about up until now. What we've established is that every single one of us is put in a position of authority at one point or another in our lives. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Some people only have authority over the people directly in their family, i.e. children, or maybe parents when they get to an elderly age, or maybe a subordinate that works below you. Others are given awesome powers and authority over other people as a daily function of their jobs. And so we need to know it doesn't matter who you are, if you're a superior court judge or if you are a parent of a couple of children and that is the extent of your authority. The same rules apply. We need to judge favorably and we need to rule with mercy. Always. And think about yourself. That's the right way to do it. If you want clarity on how to do it properly, just stop and think. What would I want? Because we're adults. We've been through life, and we know what it feels like to be treated as second class. We know what it feels like to not be heard. We know what it feels like to not be taken seriously. It's very upsetting when you want to get somebody who really cares to be able to step up and do something for you, and instead you end up getting the raw end of the deal every single time. It's very, very upsetting. And so it's fair to conclude that nobody else wants to be put through the same torture. People want to have positive experiences and successes in their life. Everybody wants a handout, and everybody wants a second chance and a third chance. And we get so many chances from our Creator. And so we have to emulate Him. Remember that. Put yourself in these people's shoes and think, what would I want? So many people just aren't capable of doing that. Think about it. Everybody goes through life, and they go through the difficulties and the hardships and the tribulations, and they have people of authority breathing down their necks and not treating them fairly. And in that moment, they're miserable. And rightly so. They should be upset. But they don't learn from that. And the key is to learn. The same way I'm upset because somebody came at me the wrong way, because somebody treated me unfairly, because somebody overjudged me, and somebody held me to the letter of the law, didn't give me a 1% break. It's not a good feeling. And so why would you perpetuate that? Why would you want the next person to feel that? It's a negative approach to life. We want to bring positivity into this world. We want to bring goodness into this world. And the way to do that is by injecting mercy into your judgments and by giving people the benefit of the doubt. That's it. Now, the book continues on and it says, okay, so now we've been talking about people in positions of authority. What's the worst case scenario? What happens if you come across a Supreme Court justice and that justice puts you through a trial and they throw the book at you and they're not lenient with you at all? And where do you find yourself? At the worst place possible, incarcerated. You're in prison. You have your rights taken away from you. You are no longer a productive member of society. Hard thing to imagine. I can't imagine it. Most people can't. Most people don't spend any time in prison. If you've been in prison, then you understand this. I haven't. I can't really speak to it, but I can only imagine that all of the freedoms and liberties and rights that you take for granted every single day of your life are taken away from you. That's a hard pill to swallow. Now, what happens when you find yourself there? If you find yourself in this position, which is a very, very difficult position to find yourself in. And the lesson can be taken from none other than Joseph. Lots of messages come out of the story of Joseph and his brothers. A lot of you guys are familiar with the story. Joseph is sold into slavery in Egypt, and he becomes a slave to a very high official in the Egyptian government. And this individual's wife is a lonely housewife who likes to control. And she sees Joseph, this young, handsome young man, strapping, who's in charge of her house, and her husband is never home. And eventually she starts to make passes towards Joseph. And Joseph now has to fight his young male urges to be with this woman. And he succeeds. Against all odds, he succeeds in this very, very difficult challenge. And she accuses him of trying to assault her. And as a result of her accusations, Joseph ends up in a prison in Egypt. Now, a prison in Egypt in those days was not a fancy place. It wasn't a prison like you see today in North America. It was an underground dungeon. It was a pit from hell. Nothing comparable to what you and I can imagine today. But how did he respond? What did he do? And what happened as a result of his approach to being incarcerated? The story goes that Joseph was a happy-go-lucky guy, that he was known for singing and dancing in the prison. But along with that singing and dancing came a lot of prayer, came a lot of conversation with his Creator. Now remember, this is somebody who was falsely accused. He was thrown in prison for something that he didn't do. And despite that, he was a happy-go-lucky guy. Despite that, he had a positive outlook on life. He didn't let his situation bring him down. Why? Because he understood where it came from. He understood that God runs the world. God doesn't only run the world when you're having babies, bringing children into the world and enjoying that moment. God doesn't only run the world when you get your paycheck. God doesn't only run the world when you close a very big business deal. God doesn't only run the world when you're getting married, right? That's not the only time God runs the world. He also runs the world when, God forbid, you get diagnosed with a serious illness. And he also runs the world when you find yourself incarcerated in a pit in Egypt under a conviction that you were innocent of. He still runs the world, and Joseph knew that. And because he constantly reminded himself of this, he was able to walk around happy-go-lucky, precisely because he constantly told himself, I'm here because God put me here. There's no other reason. And think about it. This is after his brothers tried to kill him, okay, if that's not torturous enough. This is after he gets sold into slavery, if that's not bad enough. This is after he is aggressively pursued by his master's wife in the house that he was working. And now he's in a dungeon for a crime that he didn't commit. And he still manages to recognize that God runs the world. And the only reason that he's in that position is because God put him there. That, my friends, is the secret recipe to being happy in this life, is to nullify your will. Joseph wasn't sitting there in his prison cell every day thinking, I need to be outside. I need to be a free person. What he was reminding himself of was that I'm in the best place possible. How could it be that all of these things that happened to me were actually good? Everybody who reads them every year when we read the Torah, we think, wow, tragic. But in his mind, it was perfect. And he reminded himself daily that he was in a perfect situation. How did he know it was a perfect situation? Because God put him there. And God is his loving father. And if God says, this is where you're going to be right now, my son, get comfortable, then that's exactly what he did. He got comfortable. Now, that doesn't mean that you put your feet up. That doesn't mean that you accept it and you don't strive for anything better. Of course you do. That's your impetus to start praying. That's your message to start having your conversation with your Creator, like we've said many times in this podcast. It's time for me to start doing some introspection. So God took him out of the noise. He took him out of the world. You're no longer allowed to interact with people and be distracted by women chasing you or by people trying to kill you. And now just reflect on who you are. Reflect on where you've come to in your life and the things that you've done, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And figure out where you've made mistakes. Figure out where you need to improve, how you're going to make changes. Once you've figured that out, we can have a conversation about getting you out of here and back into society. But take this opportunity, Joseph, to be able to do a reconciliation of your life. And that's what happened. And as a result of that, he walked around the prison, the Torah tells us, with a smile on his face. And the cupbearer and the chief baker, who were also in the prison with him, it says that he came over to them when they were brought into prison, and he saw them one day upset because they were in prison. And he said to them, guys, why the sad face? And everybody asked, what do you mean? What kind of a question is that? Why the sad face? We were just convicted. We were just thrown in a dungeon. Who wants to be here? Of course they're sad, meaning to say that everybody else that's in prison was obviously miserable and upset that they had to be there. And Joseph was the exception. And because he was the exception, what happened to him? We all know the story. When his time was up in prison, when he had done the final reconciliation and the accounting was there, and he knew right from wrong. He put his life in order. He assessed and reassessed and understood what had happened in the past and what needs to change. At that point, not only was he released from prison, but they rushed him out of prison. They rushed him out and they took him straight up to where? The Pharaoh. 1 second, he finds himself underground in a dungeon, and the next, he finds himself cleaned up, dressed in the finest clothing, shaved and showered, and standing before the Pharaoh. And then he interprets the dream for the Pharaoh, and as a result of his interpretations of the dream, he ends up becoming the Viceroy of Egypt, the second in command of the entire world. Remember, Egypt was a superpower at the time. They controlled everything in the world. And Pharaoh says to Joseph, "You are going to be my right-hand man. I'm going to be the only human being who has power over you." You understand? From the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. And all that was in the merit of the fact that he had the time to understand and to reconcile and to have conversations with his creator and to not be distracted by the noise and to prepare himself for the next stage of his life. I've said this before. This was very similar to what God does to all of us. He pulls us back and he brings us down and further back. And we wonder, why, Hashem? We're trying to move forward. We're trying to grow. We're trying to improve. We want more money. We want more assets, and we want more spiritual growth, and we want to put more into the world, and we want to continue to do good, and we want to have more children, and we want to do all these wonderful things that you brought us here to do. Why are you bringing me back? Why are you taking money out of my pocket? Why are you getting me a demotion at work? Why is my business failing? And what we don't understand is that it's the same thing that he's done to Joseph. It's just like a bow and arrow. He's pulling you back. He's pulling back on that bow. And the further he pulls you back, when he releases, the further you will project, the further you will go. It's all in preparation and a requirement for your propulsion, for the extent to which he wants to send you. He is preparing you for that very mission. So get ready for it. Don't look at the setbacks in your life as negative, because they aren't. Your God, your Father in heaven, does not want to punish you for no reason. Every time he pulls that bow back, it's because when he releases it, he's going to send you that much further forward. But remember, when you are on that mission and you are moving forward, you need to conduct yourself accordingly. You can no longer be the same person that you were while he was pulling that arrow back. That was the intention behind the pull. So take the opportunity while you're going through the challenges and the tribulations to recognize his hands, to see his mercy, to see his compassion, to see what he's doing for you. Take that opportunity to grow emotionally and spiritually and psychologically. Grow the person that you are, become bigger and better and stronger, more resilient, so that when you are put in that situation of greatness, you will excel and succeed. Have an amazing day, my friends.
Thank you for spending time with us on the Trust Factor podcast. If you've heard something today that moved you, save this episode and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming conversations that challenge, empower, and uplift. And if you're on social media, connect with us. Leave your thoughts. Drop a quote that resonated with you. Hashtag the Trust Factor podcast. Until next time, keep growing in your trust and keep living with purpose. I'm Jesse Revivo, and this has been the Trust Factor Podcast. Thanks for listening.